Chapter 552. There was clearly nothing worth staying in that world, but deciding not to go back and forgetting to go back were two different things. Gu Mingming did not know what she could not bear to part with. She just felt that it was difficult to breathe and something was about to spill out of her eyes uncontrollably. Snake frowned and cupped her little face, asking, "Why are you crying all of a sudden? Is the food too disgusting?" Gu Mingming shook her head and pursed her lips to suppress her emotions. She said in a nasal voice, "I want to see my hubby, let me see him. I really need him now, really need him." Snake's face was as cold as ice and there was a dangerous factor swirling in his eyes. He caressed Gu Mingming's face with one hand and circled the back of her head with the other. He pressed down on her neck lightly and pushed her into his arms. His voice was filled with suppressed anger, calm but dangerous. "What do you need? I will satisfy you." Gu Mingming shook her head and sobbed, "I want my hubby. I want my hubby." Snake's brows were tightly knitted together and his voice became much colder. "All right, then I will be your hubby." Gu Mingming pushed Snake away and resisted his hug. Like a mischievous child, she shouted with tears and snot all over her face, "I don't want you, I want my hubby, let me see my hubby." Sob, sob. "I want my hubby." Snake gritted his teeth. The irritated feeling made him want to bite this troublemaking girl to death. But his poisonous fangs seemed to be stuck to his mouth and he could not say a word. Taking a deep breath, Snake let go of Gu Mingming. He did not say anything and just turned to leave the cave. Gu Mingming wanted to follow him out too. She wanted to find Elvis and Leah. But the cave entrance was completely blocked by colorful snakes. Unless Gu Mingming wriggled through the snakes, there was no way she could leave the cave. Gu Mingming felt extremely wronged and sat on the ground, crying loudly. She cried until she was exhausted. Then she lay on the ground and fell asleep. When Elvis arrived, he saw Gu Mingming sobbing as she slept on the ground. She always had a way to make his heart ache. Elvis frowned and took 2 steps forward to hug Gu Mingming. The familiar smell and warmth made Gu Mingming feel at ease, but her eyes were too swollen and she was really too tired from crying just now, so Gu Mingming could only find a comfortable angle in Elvis's arms and continue sleeping. When she woke up, it was already past midnight. Besides Elvis, Leah was also called over. The 2 males were in their original forms, protecting Gu Mingming in the middle, one on the left and one on the right. The moment she opened her eyes, she had an illusion that she was still in the cave at St. Nazir. "You cried and called the 2 of them over just to sleep with you?" The cold voice pulled Gu Mingming back to reality. She looked up at Snake who was standing on top of her head and grabbed onto Elvis like a startled bird. She shrunk into his arms with all her might, wishing she could just bury herself in his chest. Elvis had no choice but to transform into his human form and pull her into his arms. He patted her back gently and comforted her, "It's all right, it's all right. Xiao Meng, don't be scared, I'm here." Gu Mingming nodded her head obediently. She only used her nose to reply with a before she felt like crying again. Chapter 553. Burp. Gu Mingming was so frightened that she burped, but she forced herself to hold back her tears. Elvis was helpless. He himself could not defeat Snake, and in addition he was poisoned by him, so he could not muster up any strength. It was already very difficult for him to carry Gu Mingming. He wanted to put on the airs of a man to protect his wife, but he could not. He could only pat Gu Mingming's back lightly to calm her emotions, then looked at her with guilt and heartache, asking, "You are crying just to make my heart ache?" Gu Mingming shook her head, then pounced into Elvis's arms, hugging him tightly. After calming her emotions, she said, "Snake said, he knows the way to let me go back." The moment Gu Mingming finished her sentence, she could clearly feel the arm hugging her tightened instinctively. Gu Mingming looked up, meeting Elvis's shocked, stunned, panicked and helpless blue eyes. She smiled sweetly, saying, "But I didn't listen. I said, I don't want to go back, hubby, am I right?" Elvis felt as if a breath was stuck in his throat, and after hearing the second half of Gu Mingming's sentence, he exhaled with a smile. He hugged Gu Mingming tightly in his arms, one hand protecting her waist, the other supporting the back of her head, kissing her deeply on the lips. At that moment, no words could express his feelings. He did not know whether to say that it was good to have a new lease on life, or to say that he was lucky for 3 lifetimes. He only knew that he had never hated himself, a mere 5th-level orc, so weak in front of Snake. If not, the first thing he would have done was to kill Snake, so that the method to transmigrate back would remain a secret forever. Leah also transformed into a half-orc, his large furry tail gently protecting Gu Mingming's back. When Elvis finally let go of her, Leah then said, "This is a good thing, why are you crying?" Gu Mingming turned to look at Leah, her eyes were like the washed night sky, so innocent that it made one's heart ache. "I don't know, I just feel that I can never go back, it's very sad." Leah sighed, asking, "Can't bear to part with your swimsuit, Prince Charming?" Gu Mingming was stunned, her homesickness dissipating by half. She shook her head awkwardly, blaming Leah for ruining the atmosphere. Leah asked, "Then you can't bear to leave UC Jean?" Crack. The atmosphere was completely destroyed by Leah. Gu Mingming grabbed a small stone and threw it at Leah, saying, "How many times have I told you, UC Jean is a fictional character, there is no such person, no no no." Leah rubbed Gu Mingming's little head and said, all right, if you say no then no. It's just that if he comes knocking one day, tisk he, Elvis and I will not return you to him." Gu Mingming was going crazy. She punched Leah a few times in the air and said, "I told you there's no such person." Leah smiled warmly and stared at Gu Mingming, nodding his head with a "yeah, continue making up stories" expression. Gu Mingming snorted before turning around and burrowing back into Elvis's arms. She knew that Leah was using his method to calm her down. And this method was obviously effective. She didn't want to cry anymore, and she felt that the way she had cried just now was so funny. Chapter 554. Elvis stroked Gu Mingming's little head, then smiled gently and said, "Your decision saved my life. Thank you, my queen." Gu Mingming's face turned red. Gu Mingming sniffled and leaned into Elvis's arms. She closed her eyes in bliss. Snake walked forward and picked Gu Mingming up from Elvis's arms, then said, "All right, you two can leave now." Gu Mingming kicked her legs. "I don't want to. I want to be with my hubby." Snake pulled Gu Mingming in front of him and stared at her with his vertical pupils. He said coldly, "Are you challenging my patience?" Gu Mingming looked at Snake coldly. Gu Mingming wilted. She lost her confidence. At first, she was so flustered that she forgot about how scary Snake was when she was fooling around. But now that she had calmed down, she could no longer throw a tantrum without any restraint. Elvis and Leah didn't want to make things difficult for Gu Mingming, so they could only walk to her side and kiss her little hand. "Xiaomeng, protect yourself well. That's the most important thing, do you understand?" Snake stared at Gu Mingming's kissed hand in disgust. He pulled it back and simply hugged Gu Mingming. He glared at Elvis and Leah with a darkened face. "I'll eat you if you don't leave now." The two of them felt helpless. They had never been so cowardly since they established Saint Nazir. But he was the Beast King. After Elvis and Leah left, Gu Mingming did not say a word. She just lay by the fire quietly with her back facing Snake. Snake had used 1,000 years to get used to loneliness. But Gu Mingming only used 2 to 3 days to get used to the noise. In the cave, Gu Mingming suddenly stopped talking, which made Snake feel that something was wrong. He sat behind Gu Mingming. He looked at the back of her head carefully. Clearing his throat, he asked, "Do you want me to bring you out to pluck some fruits?" Gu Mingming replied, "No. You kick the tree every time you disagree. You're going to wipe out the rare species sooner or later." Snake said. Then, Gu Mingming said, "I don't want to talk." Snake was silent for a moment. He felt a little lost. He was used to her being by his side. He had even forgotten how he had survived for the past 1,000 years. But he didn't have anything that could make her happy. As far as he knew, the only thing that could make her happy were those 2 males. Gu Mingming also felt the stifling atmosphere in the cave, but she was not in a good mood and did not want to bother about it. She simply covered her head with the beast skin and continued sleeping. The next morning, when Gu Mingming woke up, she realized that Snake was sitting right in front of her, staring at her with a, "I'm not in a good mood, come and show me some concern" expression. After a night's sleep, Gu Mingming's emotions had completely calmed down. She sat cross-legged and looked at Snake, asking, "Are you still angry?" Snake shook his head and said, "Why don't you want to go back?" Gu Mingming was taken aback. After a moment of silence, she lowered her head and smiled bitterly. "Because in that world, there is no one waiting for me to return." Snake was silent for a moment, then he slowly opened his mouth and said, "Back then, she tried her best to go back. In order to gather all the divine weapons needed for transmigration, she was unscrupulous and unscrupulous. In the end, he failed on the verge of success." Chapter 555. Gu Mingming pursed her lips and inched closer. She hesitated for a moment before grabbing onto Snake's hand and said, "Maybe there is someone in that world that she could not bear to part with." Snake chuckled and looked at Gu Mingming's little hand, saying, "This is the first time you have taken the initiative to hold my hand." Gu Mingming did not say anything and did not retract her hand. She just looked at Snake quietly because she knew that Snake had something to say. Snake used 2 breaths to adjust his emotions before saying, "The last divine weapon she needs is me." Gu Mingming was stunned and frowned slightly. Snake used his finger to gently smooth Gu Mingming's brows and said, "You are already ugly enough. If you make wrinkles, you will be even uglier." Gu Mingming chuckled and said, "Yeah, you are the expert in skincare. I will listen to you." Both of Snake's hands landed on Gu Mingming's in the end. He held onto her small fists as if they were a source of energy for him. He slowly started to recall the past that had been washed away by time and could no longer evoke any emotions. He said, "The key to activating the gate of transmigration is a blood relative of the Beast King level. No one knows what kind of agreement she made with the Beast Deity. Anyway, after she suddenly woke up, she ran to a cave and found my Beast Father who had just woken up from his hibernation. She proposed to mate with him. There was me." Gu Mingming was a little dramatic. She suddenly thought of the scene in Legend of Miyu, where Sun Li held her stomach and said to the courtiers, "The late king sent me a dream and we had sex in the dream. In the end, when I woke up, I was pregnant." Snake did not know what Gu Mingming was thinking and continued, "Her other partners all loved her, were afraid of her and indulged her. But my father was different. Maybe it was the nature of a snake. His love was possessive and selfish. There was no such thing as sacrifice and fulfillment in a snake's dictionary. When he found out that she had mated with him just to give birth to a Beast King's blood relative to open the door of transmigration and abandon him, he was furious. Hence, he threw me into a cold pond. I slept at the bottom of the pond for many years and did not know what happened after that. But when I woke up and broke out of my shell, there was no longer a messenger of the Beast Deity in this world. As for the memories I inherited, they only lasted until the moment when my father sank me to the bottom of the cold pond." Gu Mingming patted Snake's shoulder lightly. "At least you survived. That's good enough." Snake sneered, his gaze filled with a tinge of helplessness as he asked, "Do you really think that living and not dying is a good thing?" Gu Mingming could not answer this question. She remembered reading a sentence in a book, "1,000 years of life gives birth to 1,000 years of loneliness." The beginning of his life was a scheme and exploitation. He was even more unfortunate than himself. At least, before her father cheated on her, Gu Mingming had enjoyed a few years of parental love. Snake looked up, as if he had thought of something interesting. He asked, "Is there a Beast King among your sons?" Gu Mingming's face froze. "No." Chapter 556. Gu Mingming's smile froze on her face for a moment. Indeed, ever since she came to the beast world, there seemed to be people confessing to her, expressing their goodwill and requesting to mate with her. Indeed, she could always see fanaticism, stubbornness, adoration, and possessiveness in the eyes of various males. But Snake was a special case. His eyes were dark but clear, not the kind of clarity that came from someone who did not understand anything, but the kind of clarity that came from someone who had gone through many vicissitudes of life. Gu Mingming asked herself, even if she had started practicing 10,086 ways to seduce a snake demon since she was in her mother's womb, with her less than 20 years of skills, she would not be able to play Strange Stories from a Chinese studio in front of a 1,000-year-old demon like Snake. Snake's special interest in her should be due to his curiosity towards her mother. If it was her, she would also want to know what was so good about that world that her mother was so obsessed with going back. She did not hesitate to abandon so many partners who had placed their lives in her hands, and even wanted to use her own bloodline as the key to open the door to transmigration. And this curiosity was not equivalent to adoration. Snake's hostility towards Elvis and the rest and his obvious possessiveness towards her were probably due to his snake nature. Selfish, greedy, that's all. Looking at it from another perspective, if one day you adopted a stray dog, and this dog was rather cute, foolishly wandering around in front of you every day, comforting your lonely soul and boring life. Then one day, the original owner of the dog came looking for you, saying, "This dog belongs to me, return it." If it was you, you would also feel uncomfortable, right? Of course, modern people have the most basic upbringing and etiquette, so if the original owner could provide sufficient evidence to prove that the dog really belonged to him, no matter how unwilling he was, he would still return it to him. At most, he would just discuss, "Add me on WeChat? Let me visit this idiot when it's convenient." But Snake was different. Just like what Elvis had said in the Beast world, taking by force was the right thing to do. Back then, Elvis broke off the beast horn that Oriton used to share food and snatched it for Gu Mengmeng to play with. Not only did Elvis not feel that there was a problem, Oriton also looked as though it was only natural for him to be snatched. "I can't beat you, so I deserve to be snatched by you." This was the accepted theory in the beast world. Even now, the logic was still the same. If Gu Mengmeng was a stray dog, Snake would have picked her up or snatched her. The original dog owner Elvis could not defeat Snake, so he could only watch helplessly as this dog recognized the snake as his master. Moreover, he even asked, "Snake King, can I add you on WeChat?" He could not do it, because the person who transmigrated was Gu Mengmeng, not Ma Huateng. This analogy made Gu Mengmeng's face twitch. She despised the act of comparing herself to a stray dog. It must be because Snake, this demon, kept putting his palm up and calling her Timing to train her to shake hands had affected her perception. Gu Mengmeng twitched her lips before replying to Snake with a look of disdain, "Scram." Snakel just quietly watched as the expression on Gu Mengmeng's little face changed a few times after he raised the mating request. The conclusion she came up with was actually, "Get lost?" Chapter 557. Gu Mengmeng put on a perfunctory smile and heaved a sigh of relief, saying, "Thank you so much for being so considerate for me." Snake turned his hand slightly and held onto Gu Mengmeng's wrist. His upper body leaned forward and his other hand easily grabbed onto Gu Mengmeng's other wrist. Both his hands were placed on both sides of Gu Mengmeng's body, restraining both of her hands, not giving her a chance to escape. His entire body shrouded Gu Mengmeng with a strong sense of oppression. His pair of dark green eyes carried a depth that Gu Mengmeng could not understand. There was a kind of temptation that spread through the dangerous scent, like an invisible hand firmly grabbing onto Gu Mengmeng. "Let's work together and give birth to a child with the bloodline of a beast king to open the gate of transmigration. Then, you bring me along to your original world, all right?" Gu Mengmeng's body could not move as if her acupoints had been sealed. Even though Snake's pressure made it hard for her to breathe, she could not even move backwards to avoid him. She could only bite the bullet and look into Snake's eyes. She shook her head with difficulty and said, "I promised Elvis and Leah that I will not abandon them. I will not leave them." Snake squinted his eyes and said thoughtfully, "I heard that in your world there is something called law. A female can only mate with one male, or else she will be captured and locked up." Gu Mengmeng nodded instinctively and responded with a single word, "Yeah." Snake's face slowly inched closer to Gu Mengmeng and he gave an extremely evil smile, saying, "Since you can only have one partner, why not choose the strongest one? I will accompany you to transmigrate back and become your only legal partner. With my abilities, I will be the king no matter which world I am in. That way, no one will ever bully you, isn't that good?" Gu Mengmeng did not avoid Snake's eyes and just looked at him quietly. After a long while, she slowly opened her mouth and said, "You just want to see with your own eyes what the world that your mother could not bear to part with looks like, right?" Snake's lips curled up into a vague smile, but he did not know why. Tilting his head, he said, "If I say yes, will you satisfy me?" Gu Mengmeng shook her head and said, "I will not use my own children as the price to open that door of transmigration." Snakel sneered and returned to his original position. His right hand was still holding onto Gu Mengmeng's wrist, but his gaze was looking into the distance. He said, "She is calmer than you, more rational than you, and more heartless than you. No wonder my father fell in love with her that year. She is indeed the most suitable female for the snake race." Snake turned his head and looked at Gu Mengmeng with disdain. He smiled. "Even though you are from the same world, you and her are so different." Gu Mengmeng shrugged her shoulders and said, "I'm really sorry for not meeting your family's standards for marriage." Snake pinched Gu Mengmeng's little face and said, "Family means nothing to me." Gu Mengmeng's heart skipped a beat. She still could not learn to think before speaking and would always say something that would hurt others unintentionally. Apologizing would only make the atmosphere more awkward. Gu Mengmeng patted her butt and stood up. She turned back to look at Snake, who was still holding her hand and sitting at the same spot. She said, "I'm hungry, accompany me to pluck some fruits." Chapter 558. There was someone sitting outside the cave. Gu Mengmeng glanced at him and felt that he looked familiar, but she could not recall who he was. Snake, on the other hand, completely ignored this person and walked past him without even glancing at him from the corner of his eyes. That person saw Snake and Gu Mengmeng coming out together, so he stood up and followed. Not only did Snake not slow down, he even walked faster and faster, obviously trying to shake off that person behind him. That person was neither angry nor anxious. He just followed until Snake stopped under a huge tree and looked up at the red fruits on the branches. He then stood beside Snake and looked up at the tree together with Snake. He stared at it for a long while in a daze, asking, "What are you looking at?" Snake ignored him and turned to ask Gu Mengmeng, "Do you want to eat this?" Gu Mengmeng pursed her lips and nodded as she looked at the fruits that were giving off an alluring glow. Snake then turned back to look at the person behind him and said coldly, "Go up and pluck the fruits for me." That person was taken aback and frowned, "Don't you have hands?" Snakel supported Gu Mengmeng's but with one hand and protected her waist with the other. He shook Gu Mengmeng and said righteously, "I have hands, but I'm busy, so you go." Gu Mengmeng nodded. That person seemed to be caught off guard and was stuffed with a mouthful of dog food. After holding it in for a long while, he only said fiercely, "All right." He raised his leg and kicked that fruit tree. If there were no accidents, this fruit tree would let out a sad cry of being broken and then die. But there was an accident. Before his leg could reach the fruit tree, Snake raised his leg and sent him flying. The man clutched his chest and glared at Snake, asking, "What now?" Snake's face was cold and he said, "Tu Meng likes trees, don't kick them." The man pointed at Snake and clenched his teeth for a long time before finally squeezing out a sentence, "Eep." Snake was expressionless as he walked to the man and kicked him, saying, "Are you dead? If you're not dead, go and pick some fruits. Tu Meng is hungry." The man was extremely aggrieved, but he had no other choice. He could only walk to the side of the tree and transform into a half-orc. Just as he was about to swim up the tree, Snake stepped on his tail forcefully and the man cried out in pain. He turned around and glared at Snake. "What now?" Snake's face was still cold as he said, "Tu Meng hates H*T, snakes and snakes that look like H*T. Your original form is all three. Maintain your human form and climb up. Don't show any postures that will disgust Tu Meng, or it will affect her appetite." The man was so angry that his face turned green. He pointed at Snake, then at Gu Mengmeng before pointing at Snake again. "I'm not doing this anymore. If your female wants to eat the fruit, you can climb up and pluck it yourself." Snake curled his lips and said, "It's rare for you to say something pleasant. Seeing that you're so good at talking, I've decided to help you." The man did not react in time and did not know that his unintentional "you're female" had pleased Snake. He only felt a pain in his buttocks and then he flew up. Yes, he flew up. Snake used a perfect arc to kick the man onto the tree. Looking at the man who was hanging on the tree branch like a rag doll and shouting at him, Snake revealed a "you're welcome" smile and said, "Hurry and pluck the fruit. If you spoil Tumeng, I'll kill you." Snake's eyes lit up. Aside from the topic, on Valentine's Day, Snake and Gu Mengmeng tortured Wabi. This was still just a coincidence. The script had been saved a long time ago and the daily update 9000 just happened to be here. All coincidences were probably fate. Besides, there was no more update today. My babies don't have to wait anymore. It's Valentine's Day. Go out and have a date. Don't be distracted by reading novels. Tomorrow, I'll still be here waiting for you. Chapter 559. The man on the tree was infuriated. He plucked off a fruit and threw it at Snake. Snake caught it steadily and frowned. "I want the biggest one at the top." The man waved his arms and legs in a comical manner. He looked like a character in a manga who was being abused. Gu Mengmeng pitied the innocent man. She held the fruit that was almost as big as her face with both hands. "You don't have to go through so much trouble. This is good enough." Snake turned to look at Gu Mengmeng. He asked gently, "Do you like it?" Gu Mengmeng nodded. She answered sweetly, "Yeah." Snake smiled in satisfaction. Then he carried Gu Mengmeng and turned to leave. Before he left, he glared coldly at the man on the tree. "If any of my fruit trees are damaged, I will throw you out of the Snake King Valley." Snake walked very quickly. Gu Mengmeng could no longer hear what the man on the tree was shouting. Is it all right to leave him here like that? That man had transformed just now. Although it was only for a short while, Gu Mengmeng could still recognize that he was Wabi, the one who had challenged Snake to a duel the day before and ended up being tortured. He looked like he was seriously injured and looked like he was about to turn into snake soup. And now, he was hanging on a tree. Snake frowned. "Worried?" Gu Mengmeng pursed her lips. "I just saw that you two seem to be on good terms. Aren't you afraid that he will be angry and ignore you after you treat him like this?" Snake laughed coldly. He rubbed Gu Mengmeng's head. "With you by my side in the future, he is not important anymore." Gu Mengmeng was speechless. She felt like a new pet had replaced the old pet and received the owner's love. Then, when would there be a new pet to replace her, Tumeng? "How long have you known each other?" Gu Mengmeng estimated the time she needed to be in charge. Snake stopped in his tracks. He seemed to be seriously recalling. After thinking for a long time, he said, "I forgot. Wouldn't that be a matter of 1 or 2 years?" Gu Mengmeng face-bombed. "After all, he was once important to you. Shouldn't you remember our past relationship? I think that pile of **T looks quite fun. At least it can take more hits than me. It is at least a Nokia level. Do you want to consider?" Snake's face was cold and his green eyes were filled with anger. He said, "You want him?" Gu Mengmeng waved her hands and said, No, I hate snakes and snakes that look like shit. You know that." Snake nodded and kept his unhappy expression. "If you want to play, then play me. I can take a beating too, so I should be more interesting than him." With that, he hooked Gu Mengmeng's chin lightly and brought her face closer to his. "Moreover, don't you think that my face is much prettier than his?" Gu Mengmeng nodded her head and flattered him. Beautiful, you are the most beautiful snake in the world." The corners of Snake's lips curled up and his eyes curved. He asked, "Compared to the wolf on your collarbone, who is prettier?" Gu Mengmeng shut her mouth. She did not want to speak. If he told the truth, this fellow's rage would definitely soar, but if he told a lie, he would be unwilling. Chapter 560. Gu Mengmeng felt a chill down her spine and shook off the goosebumps on her body. "Don't be so hardcore, we can still be friends." Snake's expression was calm and he did not comment. It was just eating a wolf, hardcore? Didn't he usually eat 4-legged animals like this? Was there a difference? Snake's palm was huge and cold. When his fingertips touched Gu Mengmeng's smooth face, there was a strange feeling. It was as if an electric current was spreading from his fingertips to her heart. Every touch was a numbing sensation. Gu Mengmeng's face was as white as snow. It was very strange but not annoying. Under his palm, her face looked very small. He caressed her face and felt the softness under his fingertips. It was so soft that it could make one's heart flutter. Gu Mingming brushed Snake's hand away. It's weird for you to look at me like this. You look like a wretched middle-aged uncle. Oh no, you look like a wretched 1,000-year-old demon. Snake laughed out loud. He grabbed Gu Mingming's hand and placed it on his face. Have you ever seen such a good-looking 1,000-year-old demon? Gu Mingming shook her head. It's my first time seeing a 1,000-year-old living creature. There's no comparison. Snake tapped Gu Mingming's little head. Treasure it. You probably won't be able to find another 2,000-year-old demon in this world. Snake carried Gu Mingming to the waterfall. This was the place where Gu Mingming had her stomach pumped when she was poisoned by his violence. Snake placed Gu Mingming down and took the red fruit from her hands. He washed it in the water beside the waterfall before passing it to Gu Mingming. Eat. Gu Mingming did not stand on ceremony. She took the fruit and started munching on it. Snake looked at her eating with a gentle gaze. He always felt that it was strange. Why did the food in her hands always look so delicious? He had eaten the fruit on that tree before. Although he could not remember how long ago it was, he definitely had eaten it before. Because in those long and boring years, he had tried to eat some strange things to poison himself to end his boring life. Unfortunately, there was nothing more poisonous than his own snake venom in this world. If he did not even have any impression of the taste, there should not be anything special about it. But Snake stepped forward and bit the other half of the fruit that Gu Mingming was eating. Looking at her eyes that widened in shock, Snake smiled and bit off half of the fruit with a loud crunch. Then he chewed on it carefully. Juicy and sweet. It was a little crispy, not as tasty as the animal bone. However, it was quite delicious. Why hadn't he noticed this before? Gu Mingming put down the fruit she was holding in a daze. She looked at the fruit that he had bitten off and complained, there were so many on that tree. If you wanted to eat, why didn't you ask that lump of sh*t to help you pluck one more? Snake laughed out of boredom and replied as a matter of fact, the one in your hand looks more delicious. The one in your mouth looks more delicious, but it's a pity that there's poison on my teeth. If you touch it, it might kill you. So I have no choice but to take a step back and eat the one in your hand. Gu Mingming twirled the fruit. The area where Snake had bitten had indeed turned black. Her face falling, Gu Mingming asked, can I still eat this fruit? Chapter 561. Gu Mingming sighed. She had no other choice but to break the fruit in her hand into a few pieces and feed them to Snake one piece at a time. Snake ate with gusto and looked like he was in a good mood. Gu Mingming pursed her lips and asked tentatively, Snake? It was the first time Gu Mingming called his name on her own accord, and it was also the first time he felt that his name sounded so nice. Gu Mingming fiddled with her fingers and asked softly, you promised to help me save my sons, but why haven't I seen them? Snake's face turned cold and he looked sideways at Gu Mingming and asked, are you thinking of your wild men? Gu Mingming sighed and said, how many times do I have to say it? He is my son, my biological son, not a wild man. Snake was displeased and frowned, saying, I have said before, other than me, all the males around you are wild men. If you retort again, I will eat them up. Gu Mingming was helpless and forced herself to hold back her explanation. She watched as Snake stubbornly labeled her sons as wild men, and said helplessly, then where are they? How are they now? Snake's face was cold, but he could not stand the worry in Gu Mingming's eyes. He slowly said, with me around, she will not dare to act rashly. Don't worry. Gu Mingming asked, who? Snake said, don't you know who kidnapped your sons? Gu Mingming was silent for a moment. Cole? Ellie? Snake thought for a moment and said, oh, so her name is Ellie. Gu Mingming said, you don't even know her name and you dare to guarantee that she will listen to you and not hurt my sons? Snake smiled lightly and with the confidence and calmness of a person in a superior position, he said, she is a snake beast and I am the Snake King. In this world, there is no snake that has the guts to disobey my orders. Obedience is their innate nature. Gu Mingming took 2 steps forward timidly and pulled Snake's arm, saying, then, ask her to return my sons to me. Snake snorted and said, "Do you really think your wild men will be safer by my side than by Ellie's?" Gu Mengmeng was stunned as she recalled the scene of Snake torturing Elvis. Elvis was a 5th-level orc after all, but he could not withstand a single blow from Snake. If that tail had landed on Hutta and the rest, Gu Mengmeng did not doubt that the 4 buns would have been exposed on the spot. Snake rubbed Gu Mengmeng's head and said, "Not mentioning them in front of me is the best way for you to protect them. The next time I see you worrying about them, I'll eat them to get rid of any future troubles." Gu Mengmeng shook her head and waved her hands. "No, no, no, I'm not worried at all." Snake raised his eyebrow and said, "Mengmeng too." "Ta-ta." Gu Mengmeng grinned, her face full of helplessness. Snake turned his head and said plainly, "So ugly." Gu Mengmeng sighed helplessly and thought to herself, "Ugly, hurry up and return my son and husband to me. I promise to immediately leave the Snake King Valley in a mellow manner and never pollute your eyes again." Unfortunately, Gu Coward only dared to think about it in her heart. She did not have the guts to say it out loud. Snake stood there quietly for a long time, until Gu Mengmeng almost suspected that the person standing in front of her was a statue. Rubbing her eyes, Gu Mengmeng turned her head to stretch her neck. Chapter 562. Huh. Gu Mengmeng's mind went blank for a moment and she did not manage to catch Snake's words. Snake was impatient as he frowned and said coldly, "Why aren't you looking at me anymore?" Gu Mengmeng blinked her eyes and said, My neck is sore, so I changed my posture to move around." Snake said, "When you move your neck, your eyes should be looking at me." Gu Mengmeng was taken aback as she imagined herself focusing her gaze on a point and then turning her neck. Why did she look like a possessed turtle prime minister? Seeing Gu Mengmeng burst out laughing, Snake's slight awkwardness also dissipated. He turned to face Gu Mengmeng and asked, "What are you laughing at?" Gu Mengmeng waved her hands and said, "Look." As she said that, she did what she imagined and then laughed out loud. Snake looked at the mischievous Gu Mengmeng with a layer of warmth and gentleness in his dark green and cold eyes. He said, "So ugly." Gu Mengmeng nodded and said, Right? It's too ugly, huh?" Snake carried Gu Mengmeng back into his arms and said, "Even if it's ugly, you still have to look at me." Gu Mengmeng was taken aback. What kind of twisted obsession was this? Gu Mengmeng deliberately turned her head and said, "I have to look at the road when I walk and the bowl when I eat. How can I always look at you?" Snake raised his head and said, "I will carry you when we walk and feed you when we eat. Your eyes just have to look at me." Gu Mengmeng asked, "Why?" Snake said, "Just now, you were the one who stared at me first." Gu Mengmeng thought for a moment and said, "Yeah, of course I have to look at you when I talk to you." Snake said, "Then why did you stop looking at me halfway?" Gu Mengmeng, "What do you mean by halfway? My neck is getting sore from looking at you acting like a statue all the time." Snake said in a commanding tone, "Look at me, I will allow it. But you are not allowed to stop looking halfway." He had thought that she was so entranced because the back of his head was particularly attractive, so he maintained his posture and did not dare to move for her to see. But this girl actually stopped looking halfway? Aggrieved, too aggrieved. The Snake King could not take this lying down. Gu Mengmeng shook her head helplessly. Sometimes, it was really difficult to communicate with people who were too different in age, especially those who were thousands of years apart. That was simply a gulf. Do you understand? Snake, stop right there and speak clearly. That pile of such *T. Wabi finally came down from the tree and chased after them. She took 2 quick steps and stood in front of Snake, pointing at him. "What did you say just now if she falls asleep? What are you going to do to me?" Snake was displeased and didn't like people disturbing his time with Gu Mengmeng. He ignored Wabi and just carried Gu Mengmeng away. Snake, long snake, Mengmeng, snake. "Come, let us have a good fight today and see who will be the one to throw who out of the Snake King Valley." Gu snake, to snake? As saying, "Snake Gu Mengmeng." Gu Mengmeng could not understand the situation and answered instinctively, "I can't feel the beast pressure either." Snake seemed to be relieved. He pressed the back of Gu Mingming's head with his hand and placed her little face on his shoulder. He whispered into her ear, "If you feel uncomfortable, you have to tell me." Gu Mingming nodded. Chapter 563. Gu Mingming could not help but moan softly. Then the world became very quiet. Even the wind did not dare to blow the leaves. "What's wrong?" Snake lifted Gu Mingming's chin gently and scrutinized her slightly pale face. He frowned and felt a tightness in his chest. Looking at that pile of sh*t, he felt more and more irritated. He snapped, "Didn't you say you could not feel the beast pressure?" Gu Mingming shook her head helplessly. "Are you releasing your beast pressure? I thought you were going to destroy the earth." Snake was amused by Gu Mingming's words. He glanced at Wabi, who was paralyzed on the ground. He ignored him and walked away. Gu Mingming was a little worried. Snake stopped and looked at Gu Mingming seriously. "Do you want to eat snakes?" Gu Mingming shook her head. No. Snake felt a little regretful. He turned back to look at Wabi. "The peak of 5th level. It should be very nourishing." Gu Mingming smiled embarrassedly. "I am weak and have little luck. I can't handle such nourishment." Snake did not comment. He nodded and carried Gu Mingming back into the cave. The next few days could be considered to be peaceful. Wabi seemed to have been shaken quite badly that time. Hence, he did not appear at Snake's cave for a few days. The food that Leah made would be delivered to Snake's cave by the little snakes. Every day, there would be different kinds of food. Everything was very exquisite. Gu Mingming knew that Leah was using this method to tell her that he and Elvis were fine and there was no need to worry. But as for the little wolves, she wondered how they were doing now. Snake said that Ellie did not dare to go against the Snake King's words. This was the innate nature of their race. She did not know whether it was true or not. But she did not dare to pester him any further. She could only convince herself that Snake would not lie to her. About half a month passed. Gu Mingming thought that Snake would let her and Elvis leave with the little wolves once he was sick of it. But this fellow became more and more clingy. When she slept, he would sit beside her and watch. When she ate, he would sit beside her and watch. Even when she was defecating, he sat nearby and watched. Sometimes, when Gu Mingming was really bored, she would throw small stones at each other for fun. She would throw one out and use the other to hit the stone that was thrown out first. Regardless of whether she could hit it or not, she would chase after it to pick it up and throw it again. Snake was also watching this boring game from the side, and he was enjoying it very much. The one who broke Snake's way of life of viewing Gu Mingming as a VR projection was the revived Wabi. This time, he did not challenge Snake. "Hey, little female. Are you the new sacred maiden of the Snake King Valley?" Gu Mingming pointed at her own nose and looked at Wabi. "Saintess? Me?" Wabi nodded and said, "I heard that you replaced Ellie and became the most respected female in the Snake King Valley." Gu Mingming turned to look at Snake awkwardly and said, "Really? Why haven't I heard of this before?" Snake went forward and hugged Gu Mingming in his arms. His gaze was sinister and unpredictable. He said, "My female is naturally the most respected. Not just the Snake King Valley, there is no other female more respected than you in the entire beast world." Gu Mingming sighed and said, "Great King, can you stop fooling around? At your age, not to mention being my grandfather, you can even be my ancestor. I don't dare to claim connections with you." Chapter 564. Gu Mingming shrank her neck and did not have the guts to say, "You are so smart." She laughed awkwardly and said, "I am not from the Snake tribe. It is not good to make me a saintess, right?" Snake raised his brows and said, "Why is my female not from the Snake tribe?" Gu Mingming's face fell and she said, "Great King, you should know your limits when joking. I am a married woman, you will be punished by the heavens for teasing me like this." Snakel chuckled and said, "What kind of divine punishment? Will it be lightning from the sky or fire from the god of fire? Or else, cut open my chest and take out my gallbladder?" Gu Mingming twitched her lips and let out a disdainful. She thought to herself, I have been waiting for you to release me from the Snake King Valley as an old palace made when you pardoned the world. If I become a saintess, would I still be able to leave? I am not a fool if I don't do it. Wabi-Ai walked forward and placed his arm over Gu Mingming's shoulder. He smiled and said, I am younger than him by a full 200 years. Although I am not as powerful as him now, I can't guarantee that I will improve by leaps and bounds after a few rounds of dual cultivation with you. When that time comes, I will replace him as the Snake King and ensure that your position as a saintess will last for generations to come. How about that? Gu Mingming was disgusted and she stared at that pile of *T with a look of disdain. Snake's face darkened to the extreme and he really wanted to just release his beast pressure and squash Wabi-Ai to death. But thinking of her pale and uncomfortable face the previous time, Snake forced himself to bear with it. He only reached out one hand and grabbed Wabi-Ai's wrist, twisting his hand behind his back in an anti-ergonomic way. He said in a cold voice, I told you before, Tu Ming hates snakes, hates *T, hates snakes that look like *T. You still dare to use your dirty hand to touch her? What if you hurt her? Although Wabi-Ai was a snake, the distribution of his bones in human form was not much different from humans. So Snake's hair was still very painful for him. But with his ability to withstand blows from battling with Snake for the past 800 years, this level of pain was probably just a joke. So he did not care much and continued grumbling, Sigh, don't the Snake King Valley's saintess always choose powerful males to help them break through the third-level boundary? Why can't I touch Tu Ming? The veins on Snake's forehead popped out and his temples throbbed. His pupils darkened at a speed visible to the naked eye. It was as if his green pupils were filled with poison. Just one look from him was enough to kill you. Tu Ming is my special title. Are you even worthy of calling me that? As Snake spoke, he threw away Wabi-Ai's arm and turned to clamp down on his jaw, forcing his mouth open and reaching for his tongue. Wabi-Ai was a snake and had the nature of a snake. After fighting with Snake for 800 years, Wabi-Ai was probably even clearer than Snake himself about when Snake was just entertaining himself and when he was really killing in rage. He knew that Snake was really angry now. If he did not use his trump card, he might really die in Snake's hands. So he suddenly transformed into a giant python and used the change in his body size to break free from Snake's restraint. Then, with lightning speed, he attacked Snake first to gain the upper hand. Snake laughed coldly. Gu Mingming could even faintly see his hair fluttering in the wind. It was the kind of entrance scene of a martial arts leader. Chapter 565. Gu Mingming stealthily took a step back, then another. The Snake found out. With a flick of his snake tail, Snake threw Wabi-Ai far away. As he sprinted towards Gu Mingming, he transformed into his human form. By the time he reached Gu Mingming, he was already that perfect and flawless snake. His dark green eyes glowed with a faint light, clearly still angry. He wrapped his arms around Gu Mingming's waist and didn't grab her wrist, because he knew that he might not be able to control his strength precisely after the battle. Her wrist was so thin, if he exerted even a little force, it would break. Although she would look good breaking her wrist, the process might be a little painful. He didn't like it when she was in pain, hurt, frowning, and despondent, and even more so when she was deep in thought. She wasn't thinking about him. Where to? Especially when he didn't like the way she always gave off the feeling that she wanted to leave his side. Was she the same as that woman? She desperately wanted to return to that world, while Gu Mingming desperately wanted to return to her partners and children. Why couldn't they return to him? The dangerous aura emanating from Snake was too strong. Looking at the almost crippled Wabi-Ai behind him, who would dare to defy him at this moment? Gu Mingming gave a timid smile and said, I saw that the two of you were having a good time sparring, so I made some space for you. Snake laughed coldly and asked, Where do you intend to make space for yourself? Gu Mingming kept quiet. She didn't have the courage to say, Of course, the further the better. Snake's head tilted 45 degrees downwards, his gaze unfathomable as he looked at Wabi-Ai, who was struggling to move. Don't worry, with me around, no one can hurt you, and no one can touch you. Yes, 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 yes. Gu Mengmeng smiled apologetically. Seeing Wabiai on the verge of death yet still fuming, she broke out in cold sweat. Once a person was nervous, their stomach would hurt. That twisting pain instantly made Gu Mengmeng unable to straighten her back. F***K, she was becoming more and more terrified. She was just watching others fight and she was already so scared at the start. Gu Mengmeng cursed herself in her heart while shaking her head helplessly. But, why did this feel so familiar? Gu Mengmeng lowered her head, instantly dumbfounded. His face first turned pale, then red, matching the color of the blood flowing down from between his legs. "Aunt, you really are my dear aunt. No matter where I am, your concern is always so. And it's impossible to ignore." Snake felt something in his body stirring restlessly, and the closer he got to Gu Mengmeng, the more obvious it became. When the blood between her legs trickled down, the crimson color instantly stung his eyes. Damn it! Did he accidentally injure her when he was fighting with Wabiai? He was already guarding against Wabiai from getting close to her. Was she the one who injured him? I was too focused and accidentally bumped into it? Snake's face was ghastly pale and he wanted to lift Gu Mengmeng's dress. Gu Mengmeng was shocked. She covered her dress with both hands and said, what are you doing? Check the wound, Snake replied with a frown. Gu Mengmeng blushed and stuttered. She tried her best to protect her dress and said, I'm fine, I'm really fine. Don't lift my dress. You will be punished for teasing a married woman. Snake gritted his teeth and said coldly, I am not afraid. Chapter 566. Snakel sneered and ignored Gu Mengmeng's resistance. He directly carried her up and walked like the wind. He did not look at Gu Mengmeng again and only said coldly, You look for Elvis when you're sad and Leo when you're injured, then when will you think of looking for me? Gu Mengmeng was completely dumbfounded. She had been breastfeeding after giving birth, so her period had not come. Later on, the children were given complementary foods but they were not really weaned. She would always squeeze out some milk for the children to drink once a day to supplement their nutrition. The real weaning of the wolf pups was when she participated in that beauty pageant. Maybe it was because she was too busy and messed up her biological clock so Great Aunt did not come. She had almost forgotten about this matter. Who knew that it would make such a grand and dazzling appearance today? But it was just Great Aunt. Why was Snake so angry as if he had been cuckolded? Before Gu Mengmeng could understand what was going on, Snake had already brought her back to the cave. There was a beast's skin laid on the ground and he placed her on it. His pupils were in a vertical state with only a slit. She could not tell how angry he was. Gu Mengmeng also could not figure out why Snake was so angry. Was it because she wanted to see Leah because of her period or because Wabiai's challenge today had angered him? This Wabiai was in a state where he would challenge anyone he could move for the past 800 years. Gu Mengmeng felt that it was unlikely that he could come up with any new tricks to anger Snake. Was it because she wanted to see Leah? Was there a need to be so angry? Gu Mengmeng carefully broke the silence. Snake turned around with a sharp gaze. Seeing Gu Mengmeng shrinking her neck in fright, he turned his head away again. He felt aggrieved and his chest was burning, but his tone was much gentler. Later on, when you don't bleed so much, I'll feed you some of my blood to replenish your energy. Gu Mengmeng smiled stiffly. Great King, have you forgotten? Your blood is highly toxic and does not have the same effect as the black chicken white phoenix pill. Snake glanced sideways. His pupils were thicker than before. Maybe he was not so angry anymore? You have the antibodies in your body and I will detoxify you. It's only nourishing, it's not fatal. Snake said, Do you know how many people dream of obtaining the blood of the Beast King? Gu Mengmeng looked at Snake's "You wicked slave, hurry up and thank me" expression and was at a loss for words. She hesitated for a moment before continuing, I'm just having my period. I don't think there's a need to supplement me like this, right? Great Aunt? Snake frowned and his face froze for a moment. Then he suddenly recalled the relevant scenes of his mother beast in heat from the depths of his memory. Awkward, Gu Mengmeng could almost see crows flying over Snake's head. Snake cleared his throat and said, "Female estrus is an important matter. Also needs to be replenished." With that, he stood up abruptly and paced around on the spot. Then, he walked back and looked at Gu Mengmeng condescendingly. He said sternly, "Looking for Leah the moment you're in heat? Are you in a hurry to mate?" Gu Mengmeng held her forehead and said, "Leah knows how to make sanitary pads." "I want sanitary pads?" Snake was stunned again and did not say anything. He just turned around and walked out. You can't blame him, you really can't blame him. Chapter 567. Snake raised his head and shot a look at the colorful snakes guarding the entrance. Immediately, a few little snakes slithered out. Not long after, Leah was brought over with a huge pot in his hands. Even from afar, Gu Mengmeng could smell a gingery scent. Lee's state did not seem like he was being imprisoned by someone at all. Instead, he looked like someone who cooked a pot of soup at the entrance of the cave and then brought it in. Snake knew that Gu Mengmeng was afraid of the cold, different from him. So even if the fire would dry out the cave and make him uncomfortable, he still kept the fire burning for 24 hours. So after Leah came in, he placed the pot on the fire pile with ease. Then, he said as he fiddled with it, "Here, this is the only dish that Elvis can bring out. You haven't had it since your confinement, right?" Gu Mengmeng's heart warmed. Even if it was just boiling ginger slices in water, Elvis's strict requirements for the thickness of the ginger slices were always the same. In order to cook the taste that she had praised, he was almost to the point of nitpicking. Her heart was always warm. "There's ginger here?" Gu Mengmeng took over the small bowl that Leah handed to her. She took a sip and sighed, "Ah, I'm alive again." Leah smiled gently and rubbed Gu Mengmeng's little head gently. Then, he turned to look at Snake and asked, "Can I hunt here?" Snake frowned and said, "Didn't I provide all the food for you? If you're not full, then go hungry. Settle Tuming's matter first. She wants her sanitary pad. Hurry and hand it over, don't force me to do it." Leah held back his laughter and glanced sideways at Gu Mengmeng. Gu Mengmeng looked back at Leah with an expression of, "I know how speechless you are." Leah replied with an expression of, "You still understand me." The two of them did not say a word and just looked at each other with a faint smile. But they could read the meaning in each other's eyes. Snake felt frustrated for no reason. This was the reason why he did not allow Gu Mengmeng to see Elvis and Leah. There seemed to be a strange atmosphere between them, isolating him from them. Snake's face turned cold and he said, "I don't want to kill you on Tuming's account. But my patience is limited. Hurry up and hand over the sanitary pad and get lost." Leah sighed, as if he was not afraid of Snake in the slightest. He clicked his tongue and said, "Every time you send the prey here, they are all minced into pieces. Those beast skins can't even be used anymore. I need fresh, clean, and soft animal skin to make a sanitary pad for Meng Meng. So please allow me to hunt here." Snake waved his hand impatiently and said, "Up to you. Get lost, I already want to kill someone." Leah shrugged his shoulders helplessly and said, "If you want Meng Meng to accept you, you have to get used to getting along with me and Elvis. Meng Meng cares a lot about her family. If you always show that you will hurt her family, she will not like you." The veins on Snake's forehead throbbed as he stared at Leah with narrowed eyes. Snake did not release his aura, but Leah, who was under the hierarchy, could not help but feel a chill down his spine. Then, Leah turned around and ran, directly burrowing into Gu Mengmeng's arms. In his half-orc form, he curled up behind Gu Mengmeng, wrapping his furry big tail around Gu Mengmeng's waist. He peeked out half his head from Gu Mengmeng's shoulder and complained pitifully, "Sob, sob, sob, Meng, I'm so scared." Aside from the topic, author, Leah, you are after all the great witch doctor of Saint Nazir, the ninth highness of Sauter. Can you have some face? Where's your pride? Where's your pride? Leah sneered. Want face in front of Meng Meng? Pride? Pride? Are you stupid or am I stupid? Chapter 568. Snake paused, feeling as if he was being framed. Gu Mengmeng couldn't help but laugh at Snake's infuriated look. She shook her head and sighed, "Leah has always been timid, don't scare him." As Gu Mingming said, she pulled Leah into her arms from behind and patted his back lightly. You drama queen, stop acting. Snake won't really do anything to you. Leah felt extremely comfortable being coaxed by Gu Mingming. He squinted his eyes at Snake, his sly smile carrying a hint of provocation and complacency. Seeing how Snake's green eyes were about to spit fire, his mood was exceptionally good. Raising his head, he kissed Gu Mingming's little chin, then stood up and gently hugged Gu Mingming in his arms, saying, "All right, I'll listen to you. I won't fool around anymore." Lee's hugs were always gentle and warm. Gu Mingming hugged Leah back, then asked, "Is your body okay? Can you hunt?" Gu Mingming knew that although Snake had no intention of taking Elvis and Lee's lives, he still used snake venom on them to weaken their bodies just in case, so that they could not escape with Gu Mingming. Leah raised his brows, gently hooked Gu Mingming's chin, and said with slight anger, "In your heart, am I so weak that I can't even deal with a mere wild beast?" Gu Mingming smiled in a fawning manner, saying, No, I'm just worried about you." Leah pinched Gu Mingming's little nose and shook it lightly, saying, "Don't worry blindly, lie down and wait for me to come back, don't move. If I come back later and see this place like a slaughterhouse, I won't let you off, understand?" Gu Mingming nodded, saying, "Yes." Leah hugged Gu Mingming for a while more before standing up to walk out. When he passed by Snake, he gave him a bright smile and said plainly, "In the future, you must get along well with Elvis and me, okay? Or else, you will be the one at a disadvantage because Mingming's heart is biased towards us. All the best." Snake just clenched his fists, his body stiff as he stared at Leah, swishing his big tail as he walked out of the cave step by step. Gu Mingming chuckled, "Stop staring, he's just like that. I mean no harm." Snake turned around and looked at Gu Mingming. "He threatened you." Gu Mingming blinked her eyes and looked at Snake as if she had lost her memory. Snake stepped forward and said, "He said he won't let you off. Why aren't you angry?" Gu Mingming smiled sweetly. "Why should I be angry?" Snake's face was cold as he said, "Every time I threaten you to eat them up, you always argue with me." Gu Mingming said, "How can that be the same?" What Leah meant by not letting me off was probably that he would not allow me to move around before my period ended. I would have to lie on the bed for 7 whole days. Life was hopeless. What difference was there between me and a salted fish? I know that his punishments are carried out on the basis of loving me and protecting me. He and Elvis would never do anything to make me sad. Snake frowned and asked, "If I really eat them, will you be sad?" Gu Mingming kept her smile and said seriously, "My family is my life. I will fight to the death with anyone who dares to touch my family." Chapter 569. Gu Mingming chuckled and asked, "Then do you want to be my grandfather or great-grandfather?" Snake's face was cold. The atmosphere was instantly destroyed by Gu Mingming, but for some reason, he did not feel angry. Instead, he felt that this little girl who always talked back and found trouble with him was extremely pleasing to the eye even when she was mocking him. Snorting, Snake used a gentle tone that even he could not understand and said, "Are you talking about my age again?" Gu Mingming did not deny it and just smiled. "I have no choice. You are too perfect in other aspects. This is the only thing I can use to attack you." Perfect? Snake's eyes were fixed on Gu Mingming and he was momentarily dazed. His life was so long, boring, and unbearable. He did not know how others saw him because he felt that all the lives in this world were too boring, and too mediocre. But he himself knew how much he hated himself and how much he wished that he could disappear. But what could he do? There was actually no one in this world who could kill him day after day of anticipating death. Even his hatred towards this life was slowly being erased. But she said, "He was perfect? What kind of expression is that?" Gu Mingming gave a look of disdain. "Don't tell me that, oh, this is not the life I want. I will beat you up." Snake chuckled. "You can't beat me." Gu Mingming raised her head and said indignantly, "Who said that? I am the mighty messenger of the beast deity." Snake mimicked Leah and rubbed Gu Mingming's little head. The corners of his lips curled up. Yeah, it did feel good. Meeting her proud and clear big eyes, Snake said calmly, "There are two messengers of the beast deity, but the beast king is only me." Gu Mengmeng smacked her lips. "See, you are showing off your perfect life again." Sigh, all right, mighty beast king, you are the most honorable." Snake seemed to be deliberately teasing Gu Mengmeng. He tilted his head and looked at her with disdain. He said word by word, "Oh, this is not the life I want." Gu Mengmeng waved her fist and punched Snake's chest. With a face full of anger and laughter, she said, "Sigh, do you know that you are really annoying like this?" Snake smiled and asked, "Why?" Gu Mengmeng said, "Do you know about celebrities?" Snake nodded. In his memory, the mother beast had mentioned it to his father and other partners when she was reminiscing about the past countless times. Gu Mengmeng continued, "In this world, there's a type of people called the second generation of celebrities. Because their parents are celebrities, they receive the attention of others the moment they are born and enjoy all kinds of privileges. Entering the entertainment industry was also an illusion of having deep connections. Green lights and lightning flashes along the way. Then, when you were earning money that some people couldn't even earn in their entire lives, while counting the money, you would say, 'Oh, this isn't the life I wanted at all. I hope everyone remembers me because of my hard work, and not because I'm XXX's son or daughter. If not for your parents being famous, who do you think you are?' It's the most disgusting to take advantage of someone and still act like a loser." Snake did not quite understand. He tilted his head and looked at Gu Mengmeng. "I'm not a celebrity." Chapter 570. Blessed by Nature? Snake toyed with Gu Mengmeng's adjective. Gu Mengmeng nodded and said, "Of course. Do you know? No one dared to provoke my hubby before he mated. After he mated, he immediately rose to the 4th level. Yeah, the 4th level might not be much in your eyes. But it's already very impressive outside. Do you understand?" Snake laughed in disdain. The 4th level was considered trash? Gu Mengmeng rolled her eyes at Snake in disdain and continued, "When I was trapped in solder by Cole, my hubby, a 4th level beast, led Leah, a 3rd level beast and the warriors in the tribe to fight with Cole and the rest. Sigh, solder had a total of 3 5th level beasts. In the end, they were still beaten down by my hubby. Moreover, my hubby even leveled up during the battle. Although he did not say it, I know that it was not easy to level up. I don't know how many times he was on the brink of death, how many times he clenched his teeth and how many times he crawled out from a pile of corpses to level up." Snake laughed coldly and said, "If he couldn't handle it, it only proves that he was too weak." Gu Mengmeng hissed and looked at Snake in dissatisfaction. Snake shrugged and said, "He was originally weak. Not to mention me, he couldn't even defeat Wabi-I." Gu Mengmeng pouted and said, "That's because you poisoned him." Snake did not feel that there was a problem at all and answered honestly, "He couldn't resist the poison because he didn't have the ability." Gu Mengmeng clenched her teeth and really wanted to bite Snake to death. But thinking of the poison in his body, Gu Mengmeng held back. Smacking her lips, Gu Mengmeng continued, "I wanted to praise you but you don't look like you need it. Forget it, I won't talk to you anymore in case I die of anger." Snake was taken aback. He cleared his throat and his gaze drifted to the side. With a guilty look, he said, "He can't defeat Wabi-I because Wabi-I is too strong, not because he is too weak. After all, Wabi-I is an opponent that I personally trained for 800 years. If he were to be placed outside, no one would be able to defeat him." Trained. When Gu Mengmeng heard this keyword, her body could not help but tremble. She suddenly felt like laughing and her eyes lit up. Oh, no wonder Wabi-I wanted Snake to give him an explanation the moment he saw her. Just thinking about it makes me a little excited. The image, was probably matcha-flavored poop? Gu Mengmeng twitched her lips, her interest instantly waning and she did not continue thinking about it. "So." Snake looked at Gu Mengmeng from the corner of his eye, his expression saying, "Come and flatter me." Gu Mengmeng chuckled. As a reward for her wild imagination, Gu Mengmeng nodded her head and continued, "But my hubby is so valiant, majestic, brave and extraordinary." Gu Mengmeng wanted to use a few more adjectives, but when she saw the increasingly impatient expression on Snake's face, she held back and continued, "Males can't even take one blow from you. Tell me, if you aren't blessed by the heavens, then what are you? You're like a pay-to-win warrior in a game. Not only do you have top-notch equipment and an awesome ID, but you also have a cheat code." Snake's smile stiffened as he listened. Although he did not understand a lot of the words, but were they praising him? Why did it sound so awkward? Looking at her serious face, she did not look like she was fooling him, but the more he listened, the more he felt something was wrong. Chapter 571. Snake did not look back at Gu Meng's words because Leah had already returned. He knew that Lee's last action at the door was a demonstration to him. He had never cared about this kind of opportunistic demonstration and provocation in the past 1,000 years. But this time, he clearly learned his lesson. Because he said, "In the future, you must get along well with Elvis and me. Or else, you will be the one at a disadvantage because Gu Meng's heart is biased towards us." In the future? This life that was going to be so long seemed to have become less terrible because of this word. Tuming's heart was always biased towards them? Then did that mean that he was at least in her heart? Although he felt depressed that he was not the one being biased towards, but at the same time, he also felt a little good. She already had him in her heart, right? Even her partner and beast pet could tell, but she did not notice at all. She even asked him if he wanted to be a grandfather or a great-grandfather. Idiot tooth, blessed by the heavens, the bug. Leah held a few pieces of tanned beast skin in his hands, which carried a faint smell of blood. It was not strong and could not cover up the sweet arousal smell on Gu Meng's body, but it still could not escape Snake's sensitive nose. Frowning, Snake expressed his dissatisfaction towards the piece of beast skin in Lee's hands. How could there be other smells on Tuming's body? That was a stain. Leah sneered and said, "You also know that your prey in the Snake King Valley is not up to standard? My Gu Meng has never used such a low-quality sanitary pad before." Leah swayed his tail exaggeratedly and walked to sit in front of Gu Meng with his legs crossed. He then turned back to look at Snake and said, "If it's convenient, call Elvis over. Gu Meng's stomach is not feeling well now and needs a warm hug." Snake's pupils turned vertical and revealed a murderous aura. His body was cold and could never be warmed up. He did not feel anything in the past, but now it had become a weakness that he could not mention. Ever since Gu Mengmeng fell sick the last time, Leah had unintentionally said, "Your body is too cold and will worsen Gu Mengmeng's condition." After that, he did not dare to hug Gu Mengmeng in the cave anymore. Every night he would sit not far away and watch her sleep. Even though he knew that there were colorful snakes guarding the door, he didn't dare to close his eyes for fear that someone would steal her away while he was asleep. If she was in his arms, he would be able to sleep peacefully, but his body was too cold, so every morning he would pull Gu Mengmeng out of the cave to play. He clearly liked the shade, but he purposely exposed himself to the sun. He only dared to hug her in his arms when his body had warmed up. Every single cell in his body was screaming in discomfort, but he was, damn it, enjoying this feeling. Now, this damn fox actually dared to use this matter to provoke him. Clenching his fists, he glared at the fox who was laughing recklessly. The venom on his fangs had already begun to secrete, but that damned fox still had a look of, "I like it when you can't stand me and can't kill me," on his face. Be nice to each other, her heart is biased towards us. Snake deeply felt that his dignity as a beast king was being trampled on. He was furious and wanted to kill someone, but what resonated with him was actually a warm current spreading from his chest that had been sealed in ice for thousands of years. Chapter 572. Before Elvis entered the cave, he already felt a wave of heat. Although the poison in his body made him weak, but if he was facing Gu Mengmeng, he still had the strength to do some things. Elvis smiled helplessly. He could only see her in this cowardly state of a prisoner. But the moment he smelled her fragrance, his mind was filled with scenes of them touching each other's ears and temples. After entering the cave, he realized that the scene was a little strange. Leah sat cross-legged beside Gu Mengmeng, looking at Snake with a sneaky expression. Snake's murderous aura made Lee's hair stand on end, but Leah acted as if he could not feel it. That furry tail of his swaying was clearly a very normal action, but when combined with the atmosphere, it felt like he was provoking Snake no matter how one looked at it. Gu Mingming's expression did not look too good. Lying on the beast's skin, she smiled when she saw Elvis. She called out weakly, "Hubby." Elvis's heart melted into a puddle of water. Not seeing her for the past few days, the suffocating and maniacal feeling of wanting to destroy everything was shattered by her calling him hubby. Taking 2 steps forward, he hugged Gu Mengmeng in his arms. "Are you feeling uncomfortable again?" Gu Mengmeng nodded. "Feeling a little wronged," she said coquettishly. "At the start, I only felt a little stomach ache, but now, I don't even feel like saying anything." Elvis kissed Gu Mengmeng's forehead. "It's all right, don't say anything if you don't feel like it. I will accompany you." Gu Mengmeng nodded and nestled in Elvis's arms. Elvis turned back to look at Leah. "Where's the sanitary pad? Why didn't you pat it for her?" Leah shrugged. "Mengmeng doesn't allow me to lift her skirt." With that, Leah turned back to look at Snake with a grin. Mengmeng said she wouldn't let him lift it either. The veins on Snake's forehead twitched as he calculated the chances of him rushing over and swallowing this damn fox in one gulp before framing Elvis. Elvis chuckled. Even if he was such a useless hubby, he still felt blissful to be given such a unique reliance by her. Reaching under Gu Mengmeng's skirt, Elvis smiled in understanding. He turned back to look at Leah, then at Snake, asking, "Snakes? Shouldn't there be snake sloughs?" Snake nodded his head in reply. Elvis continued, "I heard that the snake's skin is light and breathable, very suitable for females to make clothes?" Snake nodded again. Actually, he had long wanted to use his snake skin to make a set of clothes for Gu Mengmeng. But he knew that she was afraid of snakes, so he avoided showing his original form in front of her as much as possible. When he was angered by Wabi-Ai and could not help but transform into his original form to teach him a lesson, Snake did not even dare to look her in the eye, afraid that he would see repulsion and disgust in her eyes. So he had been restraining himself from using his snake skin to make clothes for Gu Mengmeng, even though he believed she would look very beautiful in it. Elvis nodded his head and said, "There are so many snakes in your Snake King Valley, can you find me 2 snake sloughs? About this wide will do." Snake looked at Elvis's measurements and frowned. Without saying a word, he turned around and walked out. Chapter 573. Seeing that Snake had walked far away, Gu Mengmeng grumbled softly, "How can I bring it up? Didn't I get poisoned after biting Snake the other time? When Snake brought me to the waterfall to have my stomach pumped, my underwear was washed away by the water. I wanted to look for you, but Snake did not give me a chance at all. What should I do? I am also in despair. I can't possibly tell Snake, 'Hi, man, please give me 2 pieces of beast skin, I want to make underwear.'" Elvis felt deeply guilty and hugged Gu Mengmeng. "I'm sorry, Xiaomeng. It's all because I was too weak and could not protect you properly. I am clearly the first partner, but I could not protect your position in the family. I have let you suffer." Gu Mengmeng was stunned. "You can't be suspecting me of having an affair with Snake at such a time?" Elvis remained silent for a moment. "I heard some snake beasts say that Snake announced to the public that you are his female." Gu Mengmeng face-bombed. He was just lonely for too long and needed to grab onto something to escape his loneliness. In his eyes, I am probably no different from a pet dog. He might like me, but it is definitely not the kind of like you are talking about. Do you know? He was so exaggerated, he actually made me the saintess of the Snake King Valley. Elvis and Leah exchanged glances. As the Snake King Valley was relatively closed off, outsiders did not know much about their internal hierarchy. Gu Mengmeng continued, "Do you know what a saintess is?" Elvis shook his head. Gu Mengmeng said, "It sounds nice, she is called a saintess. It is actually a public level-up device. In the Snake King Valley, she chooses the stronger ones to mate with, allowing the males to level up, so as to raise the strength of the Snake King Valley. What's the difference between this and a prostitute for officials? Elvis and Lee's faces turned cold, their eyes almost popping out of their sockets. They thought that although Snake was a little overbearing, he was at least sincere towards Gu Mengmeng. But he actually... Elvis hugged Gu Mengmeng tightly in his arms. "Let me bring you away." Gu Mengmeng looked up. "The poison in your body?" Elvis smiled, gently caressing Gu Mengmeng's little face. "Even if I have to risk my life, I will not let you suffer such grievances." Gu Mengmeng wanted to explain that although Snake had made her a saintess, he did not allow anyone to bully her. She said this to prove that Snake did not have that kind of feelings for her. But, Elvis and Leah seemed to have misunderstood. Gu Mengmeng patted Elvis's chest and said, "Hubby, things are not what you think." Elvis frowned and said, "Don't be afraid, I'm here." With that, Elvis placed the sanitary pad that Leah had made between Gu Mengmeng's legs and told her to clamp it properly. Then he lifted her up and walked towards the entrance of the cave step by step. The colorful snake blocked the entrance of the cave tightly, hissing and raising its upper body to warn Elvis and Leah. However, Elvis and Leah were not afraid at all. They walked forward step by step, and just as they were about to step into the pile of snakes, the colorful snakes suddenly quietened down and retreated to the sides. Elvis looked up and stared straight at Snake, who was standing at the entrance of the cave. He did not retreat at all. Even if there was a huge disparity in strength, he would never let Xiaomeng suffer just because he was afraid of death. Snake was holding a snake skin in his hands. That was the first complete snake skin he shed. It was the most suitable size that Elvis had measured, and it was also the softest and cleanest. That was a precious snake skin that every snake could only shed once in its life, and it was to be given to its own female as a token of love. Chapter 574. Elvis bared his teeth with a murderous gaze. Leah appeared slightly calmer as he took a small step forward. Gu Mengmeng did not have the tacit understanding between Elvis and Leah, but she understood what they meant. Leah held Snake back, even if it was just for a second. Elvis carried Gu Mengmeng and ran. Snake did not seem to notice Elvis and Lee's obvious desire to fight. He just took a step forward and stood closer to Gu Mengmeng. With a cold expression, he said, "Say that you are not trying to escape secretly when I am not around. No matter what others say, as long as you explain, I will believe you." "What did others say?" Gu Mengmeng lowered her head to look at the unbelievably docile colorful snakes surrounding Snake's feet and understood. She did not understand snake language, but it was obvious that these fellows had already repeated everything she had said to Elvis and the rest. From an objective point of view, Elvis was obviously carrying her and escaping. Under such circumstances, he still said that as long as she said no, he would believe her? Gu Mengmeng sighed helplessly. "I don't want to be a saintess." Snake was taken aback. He thought that Gu Mengmeng would stiffen her neck and tell the truth or obediently go along with him. No matter what, he was prepared to deal with it. But she didn't want to be the holy maiden? Snake looked at Gu Mengmeng without saying a word. Gu Mengmeng said, "Being a saintess is too miserable. If you force me to be a saintess, then even if Elvis and Leah are not around, I will still crawl away." Snake frowned. Crawling away? Did she really have to leave him? Gu Mengmeng turned her little face away and said, "But if you can take back your order and not let me be that damned saintess, then I won't run anymore." A dim light flashed across Snake's eyes, as if the world in front of him suddenly had an exit. He looked at Gu Mengmeng with uncertainty and asked, "If I don't let you become a saintess, you won't run away?" Gu Mengmeng nodded and said, "I originally came here to save my son. Now that I haven't even seen my son's shadow, why should I run? If I run away, wouldn't I have come here for nothing? Do you think it's easy for me to enter the Snake King Valley? Was it fun to fall from the sky? When I was in modern times, I didn't even ride a roller coaster. If I fall again, I might have a heart attack and die in midair." Snake's chest suddenly relaxed and his gaze became much gentler. She was clearly the one in the wrong, and yet she still looked so righteous. But why did she look so pleasing to the eye? She didn't run away because she hated him, she just didn't want to be the Holy Virgin, that's all. Snake walked forward slowly and released his beast pressure at the same time as he passed by Elvis and Leah. He controlled the amount of beast pressure extremely well, pressuring Elvis and Leah to the ground in a second but not causing Gu Mengmeng to feel that the world was shaking and everything was double. As Elvis's body went limp, Snake caught hold of Gu Mengmeng steadily and held her in his arms. I just came back from outside and my body has warmed up. This sentence seemed to be an explanation to Leah. Carrying Gu Mengmeng to sit by the fire, he wanted to slow down the speed at which his body cooled down so that he could hug her a little longer. Looking at her fiery eyes, Snake was extremely gentle and said, "I made you a saintess because I was afraid that you would be bullied in the Snake King Valley. After all, the saintess is the person with the highest status in the entire Snake King Valley other than me. But I didn't know that the so-called saintess was actually like this." Aside from the topic. Chapter 575. Actually, I have already announced to the entire Snake King Valley that from today onwards, the saintess of the Snake King Valley is a sacred and inviolable presence. No snake beast is allowed to offend her and she is no longer a level-up tool. But if you really don't like the title of saintess, you don't have to do it. With me around, no snake would dare to bully you. Snake'll hugged Gu Mengmeng tightly while his body temperature was still warm. Then, he placed her back beside the fire reluctantly and stepped back a distance away. Next time, just tell me directly what you like or dislike. Running away is not a good way to express it. Snake hesitated for a moment before slowly taking out his snake skin from behind him. Do you want this? He no longer dared to force what he thought was good on her. It seemed like the experience passed down by his father was not suitable for Gu Mengmeng. Surprise and whatnot, it was indeed nonsense. Gu Mengmeng's eyes widened as she took the snake skin from Snake's hands in surprise. She exclaimed in admiration. This is a snake skin. It looks like a super high-grade cloth. It feels so good, so delicate and soft. The tips of Snake's ears turned slightly red. She said she liked his snake skin. Gu Mengmeng pursed her lips and smiled. Since you have already given me a present, I will not argue with you about the saintess. But can you not bully my hubby in the future? You are a beast king, how can you bully the weak? Snake stared coldly at Elvis and Leah, who were struggling to get up from the ground. He sneered. He has the nerve to be so weak. What do I have to be embarrassed about? Gu Mengmeng choked. She forgot. This was the beast world. The winner gets to enjoy all the benefits. Taking others by force was the right thing to do. Gu Mengmeng wrinkled her nose. Can't we play happily? Elvis returned to Gu Mengmeng's side and protected her in his arms. His warm palm caressed her stomach. I may not be strong enough, but I will not let anyone bully my female. Unless Xiao Meng is willing, no one can force her. Leah secretly panted for a long time at an angle that Gu Mengmeng could not see, before forcefully suppressing the fishy taste in his throat. Warming up his facial muscles, he changed into a wretched look and pounced into Gu Mengmeng's arms, pretending to cry. Sob, sob, sob. Mengmeng, look at this snake. He always bullies me, so scared that my little heart is thumping non-stop. As he spoke, Leah pulled Gu Mengmeng's little hand into his arms and pressed it against his chest. Yeah, I want Mengmeng to rub it. Gu Mengmeng knew that although Leah had been stuck at the peak of 3rd level for a long time, not leveling up meant not leveling up. Snake's beast pressure had suppressed Elvis to such a state, and to Leah, the pain was more than doubled. So she didn't stop him. Instead, she followed his words and gently rubbed his chest with her little hand. Does this make you feel better? Leah was also taken aback. He just did not want Mengmeng to worry. But how could he bear to remove this disguise when she was so gentle? His furry big tail circled behind Gu Mengmeng's waist, supporting her body. Actually, it was him hugging her, but it looked like he was acting coquettishly in her arms. Elvis retreated and took over the snake skin from Gu Mengmeng's hands to start making her underwear. Chapter 576. Leah glanced sideways, his long and narrow eyes sweeping across Snake. He smiled faintly and said, I told you long ago to get along well with us, but you just wouldn't listen. Gu Mengmeng poked Li's chest and said, you can't beat him in a fight and you still have a cheap mouth? Leah held Gu Mengmeng's little hand and kissed it gently. So what if I can't win? With you protecting me, he won't kill me. If he's injured, you'll feel sorry for him. I can't wait for him to hit me every day. Gu Mengmeng smiled and pinched Leah. I knew you were a masochist. Leah smiled flirtatiously. I only do this to you. With that, Leah placed his hand on Gu Mengmeng's abdomen and rubbed it slowly. Will it feel better like this? After all that, it seems like the blood is flowing even more fiercely than before. Gu Mengmeng glanced at Elvis, who was openly making panties, and suddenly stopped what he was doing. His blue eyes were filled with worry. Snake, who was standing a distance away, did not have any expression on his face, but his eyes were fixed on her. The vixen in her arms stared at her as if she wanted to write the 5,000 years of infatuation of China on her face. Suddenly, there was a feeling that the whole world had quietened down, waiting for her words. Gu Mengmeng smiled awkwardly and said, Sigh, women are always like this. I'm already used to it, it's nothing. Elvis remained silent and lowered his head to continue making panties. Snake no longer cared about what Elvis would do with his precious snake skin. It would be better if it was used on her. However, when he thought about how she had to bleed like this every month, he felt inexplicably frustrated. I heard that snake meat is very nutritious. Snake lowered his head and looked at the colorful snakes by his feet. He picked the fattest and most tender one and held it in his hand. Ask the fox to stew this snake to nourish you. Gu Mengmeng looked at Snake in shock. Do you know what that feels like? Then one day your boyfriend says, Baby, you lose a lot of blood every month. It's too bad for your body. In the future, I'll kill someone every month and stew it for you to nourish your body. The feeling of... Gu Mengmeng pointed at Snake with trembling hands and said, You are the Snake King. Those are your people? Snake replied indifferently, That's right, so I can kill and stew whenever I want. Gu Mengmeng shook her head. No, you know I'm scared of snakes. Snake frowned and looked at the colorful snake. He thought for a while and said, The fox is very good at cooking. When he is done stewing it, you shouldn't be able to tell that it is a snake. Gu Mengmeng was really speechless. Snake's way of recognizing people was really unique. Although Leah could not defeat him, he did not expect his culinary skills to be so well known. Elvis was very familiar with making clothes. He only used a small portion of Snake's snake skin to make a small underwear suitable for Gu Mengmeng. He measured it slightly to make sure that there was no problem with the measurements, before finally saying, Xiaomeng doesn't like others to watch her wear her clothes. Both of you go out. Bring those snakes out as well. Snake raised his brows, clearly unconvinced. This was the Snake King Valley. Since when was it up to this weak wolf to give orders? However, Leah stood up seductively and walked past Snake. He smiled and said, This is family relations. The first partner's absolute authority is second only to Gu Mengmeng. Aside from the topic. Chapter 577. Snake was taken aback, so, he could be considered as a member of Gu Mengmeng's family? Looking at Li's wretched face, Snake understood that he meant that if he treated himself as the Snake King, they would not be able to do anything to him, but if he wanted to join Gu Mengmeng's family, he would have to follow the family rules. Snake did not say a word, he just silently turned around and walked out of the cave. A group of colorful snakes followed behind him, none of them staying behind to keep watch. Leah turned back and winked at Gu Mengmeng, before following Snake out of the cave. Elvis pretended not to see the eye contact between Leah and Snake. He was not willing to accept that there was another powerful pervert in his family, one that he could never catch up to no matter what. If Snake was only a 5th-level peak orc, even if he was as strong as Wabi, he dared to say that he would be able to catch up to him one day. But he was a beast king. That was not a gap that could be crossed by hard work alone. It required opportunity and bloodline. And he definitely did not have that kind of bloodline. He would not be able to stop Snake. With the difference in their abilities, Snake could totally kill him and Leah, then replace them and forcefully keep Gu Mengmeng by his side. Not to mention that no one in the Snake King Valley dared to covet Gu Mengmeng. Even in the entire beast world, no one would dare to harm a single hair on Gu Mengmeng's head. But he didn't do that. He was even willing to let go of his pride as a king and comply with the family rules. He was Snake, he was the rule of the Snake King Valley. To put it in an arrogant way, he was the rule of the beast world. This meant that Gu Mengmeng was already very important to that snake. However, Elvis did not have the courage to ask Gu Mengmeng again, "Do you want to take him in as your partner?" He couldn't bring himself to ask this question. He was afraid to hear her answer. Therefore, he could only pretend to be deaf and dumb, pretending that he didn't notice anything. He helped Gu Mengmeng wear her snake skin panties properly, then covered her with the sanitary pad that Leah had prepared. After cleaning up the bloodstains on her body, he gently kissed her forehead. Gu Mengmeng wrapped her arms around his neck and asked, "Hubby, is there something on your mind?" Elvis was taken aback. He looked into her eyes and forced a smile. "No, it's just that I haven't seen you for a long time and I miss you a lot." Gu Mengmeng looked at Elvis apologetically and said, "I'm sorry, hubby. I always promised that I would not be willful in the future, but I still dragged you and Leah into such a dangerous situation. I really can't leave my son alone. As long as we successfully rescue him this time, I won't be willful in the future. I promise." Elvis kissed her little mouth lovingly and pressed down the 3 fingers she had raised up. Indulging your willfulness and cleaning up the mess is what a first partner should do. But the more Elvis said, the more guilty she felt. Elvis pulled Gu Mengmeng's little hand and kissed it, saying, "Snake did not forbid Leah and I from taking action. He even guided us to look for some hidden spots in the Snake King Valley. I guess he wants to help us find Huda and the rest." Chapter 578. Elvis smiled faintly. To be honest, he could understand Snake's thoughts. He was in a hurry to find those 3 wolf pups, not because he had any special feelings towards them, but because Gu Mengmeng would not give up until he found those 3 wolf pups. And while Snake allowed Elvis and Leah to search for the children in the Snake King Valley, he could also be helping Ellie hide the children. Not for any other reason, but because once the children were found, Gu Mengmeng's next obsession would become leaving. He gave her a promise and a bottom line, that the 3 children controlled by Ellie were safe, but she just could not find them. So, she had to stay here and continue searching. What if one day, Gu Mengmeng suddenly lost interest in children and thought it through, she could just have another nest? By then he and Leah would be the second wave of persistence to keep Gu Mengmeng here. So, no matter how much Snake disliked them, he only used poison to control them to prevent them from escaping, but did not really have the intention to kill them. Or else, so what if he was a 5th-level beast? In front of a perversely strong fellow like Snake, he was too weak to withstand a single blow. The commotion in the cave did not escape the 2 people outside. Just as Elvis was thinking about how to reply to Gu Mengmeng, Snake and Leah had already walked back. But with them, there was no colorful snake pack. Gu Mengmeng was rather surprised, asking, "Where are your people? Not following them anymore?" Snake looked at Leah, then replied, "They were afraid that I would cook them for you to eat, so they ran away." Gu Mengmeng would be a fool to believe him. Just from the look he gave Leah, Gu Mengmeng knew that Leah must have said something to him outside the cave to convince him to remove the surveillance system. But if he did not expose it, why did he have to embarrass him? So Gu Mengmeng pretended not to understand, and laughed. "See, a tyrant will most likely be deserted by his own people." Saying, "I will eat you," for no reason, it must have scared away the people around him. Gu Mengmeng did not know that her unintentional joke had caused Snake to never say those words again in his life. "Mengmeng." Leah wagged his tail and walked to Gu Mengmeng's side. "I was scared by him today. You have to sleep with me tonight." Gu Mengmeng looked at Snake and saw that he had no intention of objecting. She thought to herself that Leah had some tricks up his sleeves. He managed to tame Elvis and coax Snake too. TSK, a 3rd-level beast managing a 5th-level beast and a beast king so well. "Alright, then you can keep your son to sleep with me." Coincidentally, I'm craving warmth these few days. As Gu Mengmeng said, she opened her arms and waited for Leah to jump into them. But Elvis carried Gu Mengmeng up and said, "It's too cold here, it's not suitable for you. Come back with us for a few days." Gu Mengmeng instinctively looked at Snake. Snake was obviously unwilling, but he did not stop her. He just turned his face to the other side and remained silent. Was this tacit approval? Gu Mengmeng grinned and gave Leah 2 thumbs up. Leah lifted his chin proudly and wagged his large tail. "All right, let's go first." Snake must not have rested well while Gu Mengmeng was staying here. Take advantage of these few days to recuperate. Chapter 579. Leah smiled and said, 10 words. Gu Mengmeng looked at Leah with sparkling eyes and counted with her fingers, saying, "If you don't want people to know, don't do it." Leah was stunned for a moment, then he shook his head while suppressing his laughter. He wanted to tell her directly, but wanted to know what other strange sentences she could come up with, so he coughed and said, "Guess again." Gu Mengmeng thought for a while and counted with her fingers for a long time. The sentences she could think of were either wrong or did not fit together. Finally, she shook her head and said, "Don't keep me in suspense, tell me quickly." Leah smiled and said, "Distance makes the heart grow fonder, more haste makes waste." Gu Mengmeng thought for a while, then said with a helpless face, "You also think that I have something going on with Snake?" Leah nodded honestly and said, "Isn't his reaction the best proof?" Gu Mengmeng shook her head and said, "He has been lonely for too long and needs a friend." Leah smiled faintly and said, "Do you know how many snakes there are in the Snake King Valley? Every snake here obeys him and worships him like a god. He's never alone." Gu Mengmeng wanted to say, how could snakes be the same as humans? But on second thought, to Snake, snakes were the same kind, right? But that great man was already over 1,000 years old. No matter how much he loved him, this difference was still. People say that from 17 to 18-year-old lads to 87-year-old old men, they all like 18-year-old girls. But no one had ever said that an old demon over 1,000 years old would also like 18-year-old girls. Gu Mengmeng could not accept this age difference from the bottom of her heart. She shook her head and said, "Maybe he is just a little interested in me because of his mother." Leah seemed to have seen through Gu Mengmeng's doubts and sneakily placed his arm on Elvis's shoulder and asked, "You think he is old?" Gu Mengmeng was taken aback and shifted her gaze away awkwardly. She said, "Anyway, it's just nothing like that. Don't think too much. We are here to save our son." But Leah refused to let Gu Mengmeng off just like that. Instead, he asked as if he had discovered something interesting, Then tell me, what is your psychological range?" Gu Mengmeng thought for a while and said, 3 to 5 years, that's a more ideal age difference. Leah asked, "You are 18 this year, right?" Gu Mengmeng shook her head and said, "My birthday is in the first month, I should be 19 now." Leah nodded and asked, "Then guess, how old are Elvis and I this year?" Elvis's face darkened. Even though he could not emit his beast pressure due to the poison, he still exuded a murderous aura. But Leah did not care and urged, "Look at him, his face has darkened. Guess him first, guess him first." When Leah said that, Gu Mengmeng suddenly realized this problem. She was King married and had 4 children, but she didn't even know how old her husband was. Let her calm down. A snake who looked like he was in his early 20s but was actually over 1,000 years old, Wabi, who looked like he was no older than 20, was actually more than 800 years old, then a 24 or 25-year-old Elvis. What the hell? Did she really marry a great-grandfather? Gu Mengmeng's voice trembled as she asked, Hubby, how old are you, this year?" Elvis looked at Leah coldly and said faintly, "I forgot." Forgot. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.